My name is Lolo de Puzzlo, and this is Media Delta. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Media Delta. We have an interesting one this time because this is a movie that is not. It's one of those movies that it's not directly based on a video game. Um, One second. I shouldn't have ran there, but yeah. Also, I forgot to hit the thing. Okay, 3, 2. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Media Delta. This one's kind of a weird one because, well, first off, I should say, by the time that this is released, it will be October, which means we are honor bound to do some spooky movies. And this first one is kind of an interesting one because it's not one that's directly based on a video game. However, this is one that is, I know it's definitely influential for one in particular, but I feel like it's interesting because it's a chance to look at a movie that is by a pretty highly regarded horror director, at least as far as my very novice into horror movie director knowledge thing is. It's definitely a name that I've heard thrown around a lot. That being Dario Argento, who is an Italian horror film creator, or director, I should say. And the movie that we are talking about is the 1985 movie Phenomena, which I hate that I can't hear that name without also thinking that.
Phenomena.
Yeah. But yeah, this movie, at least definitely, like, I don't know if the entire movie is, but you can definitely tell from the latter half of the movie that this movie was very influential for the creation of Clock Tower.
Okay, no, you can tell at the very beginning because someone is murdered with scissors.
This is true. Also, they were not, Human Entertainment was not at all, like, subtle in regards to the main character of Clock Tower being based off Jennifer Connelly in this movie.
It is Jennifer Connelly. Let's be real.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, she is. Her name, the character's name is still Jennifer, and yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like the only thing that's different is she wears pants in the movie versus a dress in Clock Tower. But yeah, it's basically her. And yeah, so and also before we go on, I should introduce who do we have with us this episode.
Hi, I'm X. I'm here for inappropriate use of Iron Maiden's "Flash of the Blade," a song from the album Power Slave.
Hi, I'm Torpitypus, and I'm here for lead actresses getting their fingers bitten off by a chimpanzee.
Yes. So this is a fun one to talk about because, I mean, I should probably say, like, I think I would imagine that we brought this up when we talked about Sweet Home, but if you've been listening to Media Delta for a while, you realize that we don't exactly have a lot of horror movies on our list. And that is mainly because me personally am not a huge fan of horror movies, much less gore. So it's very rare that we do these, which, I mean, I'm obviously open to doing them. But it's a very weird case, especially in my part, because I'm coming as someone who isn't a huge fan of horror in general. Not necessarily that I'm not going to like any horror movies, but it's interesting for me to watch these because it's something I've definitely never really seen before. I should say that I have actually seen one of Dario Argento's other films, which was Suspiria, which is usually the more critically acclaimed one, at least as far as I know. I know it definitely has a lot of fans, and I hated the movie. So going into this one, I really had no idea what to expect. But I will get into that. So just going off the bat, this was an interesting experience for me. So I'm debating about whether or not, and one of the nice things about doing these, I should say, because it has something to do with whether I'm debating about, because Axe, I know that you are a very big horror movie fan.
Yeah.
Torpo, you're lukewarm on them, or is that?
I have no strong feelings.
So Yeah. So someone who is really into him, someone who is kind of okay, and then someone who generally dislikes. So, um, Axe, why don't we start with you in this case? Because I feel like you're going to have a different experience than really either of us.
All right, so I'm gonna throw this out here, and tell me if you think this is wrong. This is how I feel. Um, Phenomena is the deadly premonition of movies
No. Go on.
because it has a large number of flaws, but there is enough to be interesting to kind of override those flaws. I don't know. I feel they're very similar in those kinds of ways because for one thing, it's an interesting movie. The plot is a little bizarre, and the pacing it's not well paced. One of Dario Argento's biggest flaws was he liked to draw out his stories, draw out his scenes.
No shit.
Yeah. And stuff kind of happens in a way where it can be confusing while you're watching, which is not a good sign for things. But at the same time, you've got Jennifer Connelly, who's a really great actress, and this I believe is her second movie that she was in. She's doing the best she can with what they've got, and for the most part, the acting seemed all right. The special effects, I like the special effects. It wasn't too much, it wasn't too little. It was just the right amount of blood and gore. There are a couple scenes where you see certain pieces of bodies mutilated and covered in crawlies and all that stuff, but like they're not really like nasty about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it uses gore sparingly.
Yeah, and when it's used, it's to punctuate a scene and nothing more. It's not like some horror movies where the violence is a voyeuristic experience. It also had Donald Pleasance, another fantastic actor. I felt like his role was a little understated, but then that would mean adding more time to a 2-hour long film. And there are a lot of scenes I would have cut out entirely that would have made the movie feel a little more, cohesive and concise.
It's great because it's like really long and drawn out, but also the villain reveal just kind of happens out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I honestly I think like that should be I would have addressed something like that as well, because it brings to mind another old slasher film. I believe it was Prowler. And in the movie, you got a person, laying waste to everybody in this, city. They're all kind of connected and all that. So then when they finally do the reveal, it's a character who you've seen maybe like for 1 or 2 seconds, and there's literally no impact to it because you had no time to connect to that character. So yeah, I mean, like I said, Phenomena is a flawed film, but it is also a good film in my opinion. And I don't think I'll be able to convince anybody else that. But I like it. I like it on its own merits, but I also like it as a piece of gaming history. You watch it, you get to see where the inspiration for the clock characters comes from, especially Jennifer and Bobby / Scissorman. So
My favorite character, Scissor Walker.
Yeah. So even if the movie's not great, it is still fairly an important film in regards to gaming, and that's what I'll leave off with.
All right, yeah, and that's definitely something I will agree. It's like because human entertainment, especially around that time, really liked to make their games based off of particular movies. Like this one being, or like Clock Tower being based on Phenomena. You have SOS / Tetrian, which is incredibly based off of the Poseidon Adventure. You could make an argument for the Fireman being kind of a mix between Die Hard and Backdraft. it's definitely something that they're doing. And it's kind of interesting to kind of see like, oh, this is where this kind of came from.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I guess with that, Torpa, what did you feel about it?
I was okay with it. I don't know how else to put my feeling. Like, I didn't hate it. I found it amusing, but I didn't like it either. Like, like I wouldn't say lukewarm because that's not really how I describe it. Felt a bit more than that. Like I was okay with it, but I just didn't really like it or love it. It was an interesting movie. I found it a bit less unhinged than Suspiria. There wasn't a barbed wire room this time, which is tragic, but we can't all get what we want. But I don't know. I thought it was an okay movie. Some weird choices. Like for a good chunk of the movie, the villain just the killer uses what I coined the stabbing stick, which is just a stick with a blade on the end. Not a spear. No. It's this weird fucking series of poles that attach to each other with a blade at the end. And they do that so no, it's a stick. It's a knife on a stick.
Yeah,
A stick
it kind
knife.
of has to be elaborated a little bit, because you just say something like, "Oh, you're talking about a stick." No, it is the pokey stabby stick.
It
It's
is a series of interlocking rods with a sharp bit on the end. And they specifically do this so they can kill a bunch of people without actually having, the villain appear for I don't know. It didn't need to be a mystery. It wasn't super an interesting mystery.
I it's something that's like, yeah, the reveal of the killer like comes out of nowhere, but you kind of can, well, you can kind of get a gist of like who the killer would be. Um, if you like see it as like you look at the character, it's like, oh, okay, this character it's going to be obvious, but the motives for it come is more what comes out of nowhere, just the like the situation behind it.
But yeah, it's really fucking dumb in that regard. Also, the main character has fucking Beelzebub powers. That just kind of happened. And that ultimately saves the day too, I guess.
Yeah, they kind of elaborated it a little bit, but then yeah, like halfway through the movie, it's just like, oh yeah, you can speak to insects.
Oh, and now you can summon hordes of them. Congrats. It just kind of happened. All because she could sleepwalk.
Yeah. Um,
It's great too because there's a lot of weird trivia with that movie, like the time that they bred 2 million flies for a scene and then let them out, and it plagued the nearby businesses for the rest of the season.
yeah, that part was fun.
Or Jennifer Connelly having the tip of her finger bit off by a fucking chimpanzee, and they had to rush her into emergency surgery because of it.
Yeah, that was also yes.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Chekhov's chimpanzee was the weirdest fucking thing.
Yeah, it's like yeah, yeah,
Just the trained chimpanzee to help the doctor get around also just found a straight razor in the woods and ultimately killed the fucking villain.
yep.
Like I said with when we were watching it, it's a movie that comes from a time when movies had a very distinct feel to them. And like this movie absolutely just reeks of that time period. Around the time that you had, Halloween, Friday the 13th, there's just this weird, I don't know if quaint is the right word for it, but
A certain level of cheese.
that too. And like especially with Argento, because Argento liked to lean in heavily into the tropes of whatever form of horror he was doing. Um Whereas, other artists like Lucio Fulci, they mostly went like hardcore into the gore category. Argento kind of like to let things be a lot more psychological than gory. So it's one of the more interesting things about his work.
God, that movie fucking loved maggots though.
Yeah,
Not a fan of that.
To be
Recently had
fair,
to kill a bunch of flies and I still don't know where they came from.
yeah.
So this movie didn't feel great for me, but
Yeah, yeah. And maggots are disgusting. I hate them, and anytime
They're
they're in a
so
movie,
fucking gross. I have a distinct memory of a maggot falling off a ceiling onto me.
yeah,
It fucking haunts me.
I hate
But
that. Yeah.
yeah. No, it wasn't good. But yeah, no, it's as I said, it's not a I wouldn't call it bad. It was entertaining. Like on the whole, it wasn't boring. It starts real fucking slow though.
Yes. Um,
And
yes.
also the music choice is I would describe it as inspired.
Yes. Um, it's something that's very fun to watch. Like those scenes with the music. Completely. I would say if you were trying to make the scene more suspenseful, it fails spectacularly at doing that. But if
Mhm.
you want to make it entertaining, it did a damn good job at it.
Yeah. So for reference, the like this general like slow build horror movie, which is fine. Except it's really good having these slow scenes and then hearing Iron Maiden's Flash of the Blade blaring during the scene.
No, and like there's that one scene where the one lady was just walking around the room, just kind of very calmly and slowly walking around the room, and it's just you'll die as you live in the flash of the blade, and she's just walking around the room.
So good. The use of Goblin was also pretty good, but just like Flash of the Blade stuck out real hard.
And it wasn't used once; it was used twice, which is just
It
like
was used
okay,
more than twice. It was like
Yeah,
at
it was,
least 3 times.
yeah, because wasn't it played also when when Don Pleasance's character was carried out?
Yes.
hmm.
And then I thought there was another case where it was used, or maybe because there's also a Motorhead song that was used
Yeah,
in
there was a Motorhead song. It's like, to be fair, the music choice of that movie is such as that we didn't even realize there was a Motorhead song in that.
hmm just it's it's one of those weird things where like Goblin is a good artist, Iron Maiden are a fantastic artist, and Motorhead, I'm mixed on them, but you know they don't fit this movie. Like you have characters running around, and oh, yeah, you have like in the '80s there are movies where the soundtracks are just heavily synthesized to absolute shit, but like it doesn't fit a horror movie. A horror movie needs like very precise kind of music in order to evoke a sense of tension or horror. Look at the Psycho theme, where the most one of the most iconic horror themes of all time is that rent 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 rent, and just that three notes kind of first it catches your interest, but also it does kind of evoke the image of stabbing because it's got that kind of rhythm to it. And when you're scoring a movie, you want your soundtrack to actually flow with it, and you don't get that in this movie. It's just the whole soundtrack is extremely at odds with what's happening in the movie.
But like, I argue that's part of the charm of this
Oh, of
movie.
course.
Like, this movie has a certain schlocky charm to it that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
That's also like part of what kept me from disliking it is like just this weird, baffling charm it had. Like, it is a movie that is constantly at odds with itself tonally, but like I kind of like that, honestly.
Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, I feel like all the weird stuff kind of comes together to form a good and entertaining movie.
It
Is
gives
it?
it texture.
Yeah. Is it tier one? No. No, it is not. But I think it's still a good movie.
As I said, I'm not huge on it, but I enjoyed myself.
All right. Um, so my take on it. Um, so I feel like I kind of, as essentially the moderator for this, I feel like I should come at this. I'm kind of coming at this movie from about 3 different angles. I probably just start with my first one, which is, um, would I ever want to watch this movie ever again? Absolutely not. Uh, did I? Is this like? Would I say that this is a like? I I don't think I'll ever have a desire to watch this movie ever again. But um that is told so as I mentioned, it's because if the question is this a horror movie that will be for everyone, or like people who don't like horror movies? Because I mean, some horror movies are just so good that they do like I have seen horror movies that I liked. This is not one of them. More in the case of there's just too many things about that. It's like, yeah, I had to look away a good portion of this movie. It's actually kind of funny when we were watching this because I put it on for the group here. It was kind of funny that this movie has something for everyone that's just going to make them want to look away. Especially like the mutilated bodies, very like just the decapitated head that just reminds you of that one scene from Snatcher. Fun IV scenes. So if you like don't like needles, there's some fun stuff there.
Yeah, ripping out the IV. Yeah, it's great.
Cases, one slight scene of vomiting, which is a personal no for me.
Walking on glass, barefoot.
Yes.
The only thing that really got me was the bugs.
Yes, bugs, lots of bugs.
Specifically, maggots for some reason really just bug the shit out of me.
Uh-huh.
I see what you did there.
But granted,
no,
I also mentioned I've had experiences with maggots, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I share your dislike of maggots. I just don't like the way they look and move.
Yeah, it's yeah. But yeah, so on a personal level, I would not want to watch this movie again. However, I do feel like I need to put this into a couple perspective, need to look at it slightly more critically, so to speak. So I'm looking at this two other ways. One is I would guess, mechanical or competency, or maybe artistic, looking at it, like looking at a film as a film, like as a piece of created media. And I don't think this is actually. I don't think it's a like. I would not say that this is a bad movie. I would obviously not. I would not say that this is a great movie. But I would say that it is a pretty solid movie for the most part. The story is a little weird at some points and kind of has some weird views on things, so to speak. It is it's the problem of also, granted, this is an Italian directed movie with with a lot of English actors or English speaking actors.
Okay, so part of the weird thing that after we ended up looking up stuff is that the movie was generally shot in English, but any of the foreign actors spoke in their own language, and they dubbed over, which is something.
You get some scenes of really weird spoken Italian that come across as very stilted.
Okay, yeah, no, there was the one scene that was for some reason in Italian, and nobody could figure out why.
Yeah. Like, yes, like the spaghetti western, for example, except this is spaghetti horror. But yeah, I could see that being a little, like, I will give it that's probably causing a little bit of the stiltedness. I still don't think it is that, like, I still think it's a pretty competent movie. That being said, there is also the part of the other hat that I would say that would I say as a horror film, like, or is there some enjoyment to be had of this movie? Like, is this a movie that one could enjoy? And I would absolutely say, if you like horror movies, I'm sure you could like I would say that, yeah, I bet you probably would like this movie. And I can definitely see why. It's kind of, I was thinking about it because the horror genre gets there's a critical, like, it's in a weird field. Because for example, when I was in college, for one of my things I had to do because I was part econ major, and I had a class on econometrics. I had a final project to do, and one of the things that my final project was on was talking about kind of viewer numbers and viewer reception versus critical reception. And it made me realize that horror movies get shafted a lot in terms of critical reception, because they're generally viewed as a lower genre of movies, which makes me kind of remind me if I'm to compare it to like how we rank video games, like comparing it to Retro and Crapsody. I was kind of thinking that the horror movie genre, if you could actually compare it to a particular video game genre, kind of reminds me of how shmups are kind of received. How they're these very niche genre of video games that have a very small subset of people that like it. It's for a nicher audience, but sometimes you have some that kind of break that and are like more readily enjoyable. For a lot of them, they're kind of for horror like shmup fans, but in this analogy, kind of horror game or horror movie fans. Which I feel like I want to be a little bit more open about this one, especially since I want to give this movie a fair shake, and I know that I'm trying to like I was trying to watch it through a more open eyes, and I can actually see it's like yeah, I can actually see why someone would really like this movie. Now where I put this is another story, but that will be. I feel like that's when we're going to put this on the board. That's more of a discussion when that'll kind of more hit ahead. But I will say, I personally was not. I don't think I'll ever watch this again. But I can definitely see someone enjoying this. So that's my general take. Yeah. Did anyone have any other thing they wanted to bring up?
Yeah. So, I wanted to kind of touch on a point that you brought up, how horror movies kind of get shafted, and it's actually true. The horror genre as a whole is generally regarded as not really. It's regarded as a lot of people call it trash, but it's kind of like being
Not
seen
taken
as
seriously.
yeah. It can't be. So movies are seen as sort of an art form. You got your all different kinds of movies, and everybody's up their ass about their own specific genre. But because horror touches on a very specific part of our emotions, and that is fear, terror, vulnerability, and that's the main focus of horror. It doesn't really go too much far outside of those things. It's an attempt to horrify or terrify the person. And one of the biggest instances of that is the Academy Awards. There's only one horror film, and it's horror by technicality, that has won an Oscar for Best Picture, and that is The Silence of the Lambs. I know Halloween, the original, was so well acclaimed that there was argument to make at least a category for horror movies. But I mean, Get Out's another fantastic example. Get Out by Jordan Peele was an amazing horror movie. But when it got submitted for the Academy Awards, they wanted to put it under the category of comedy. So I think in the end it got put under the category of documentary, which just kind of makes it even funnier. But I mean, it's a genre that I think is extremely under respected, because it's not just all bashing heads and splatter and gore and shit like that. Like, it touches on extremely interesting and important topics. Intimacy, sexuality. Yes, it even touches on race. And even there, horror has had a bad history of dealing with those subjects, but it does try to touch upon them and find like that connection between our inner fears, our concerns, and things like that, and tries to look at the different kinds of things around us that can tie into that fear. And in some ways it tries to touch on how do you overcome those fears? How do you overcome, prejudices and things like that. There are a lot of horror movies that delve into deeper subtext than just "boo, I scared you," and it's an absolute shame to see it, be waylaid because it's not, clean and proper and
It's
prim.
it's funny too that you mentioned Get Out, because Get Out is actually a really infamous case too of a lot of the older members of the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences refusing to see the movie because it was horror and they felt it wasn't proper, and other ones disliking it because it covered race specifically, complaining that if they didn't vote for it they'd look like they were racist.
Hmm.
And it's like, damn, you people all fucking missed the point then. But yeah,
Which,
especially the older ones refuse to watch it.
Well, they
Just
proved the
outright.
point.
yeah,
Yeah,
which is a shame because that is a very good movie. I forgot that I watched.
it's a fucking incredible movie.
No, I would have voted for Obama 3 times.
God,
Oh god, that movie's so good. But yeah,
God,
my point is, like, they'll never be taken seriously, unfortunately,
No.
by the older generation, and it's tragic because you have absolutely incredible ones like Get Out that are just not taken seriously.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I'm good.
all right. Any other points?
I think I got my say out.
All right. Well, then in that case, I think that we are good to rank this. So we are going to rank this using a normal 1 to 21 scale, with 1 being absolute mastercraft, can be very hard to get any better, to 21, which is very little, even ironic enjoyment out of it. And yeah, just not a very fun movie to watch. So, Axe, where would you put this?
While I like it, I honestly feel that it's not a better film or as equally enjoyable a film as Sweet Home. And therefore, I would place it at a 9.
All right. Torpo.
I'm honestly kind of shocked you put it there, but I would agree. I would rather watch Sweet Home over this. I think Sweet Home is a better horror movie, but this was enjoyable. This is fun. But yeah, so I would probably put it. Let's see, what's at 9? What's at 10? I had more fun with this than I did with Scott Pilgrim, honestly.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, also Nickelodeon Guts and the JoJo OVA was pretty good, but
Yeah, no, nine is fine by me actually.
that this is surprisingly easy because I thought that I was expecting this to be a interesting ranking thing. For the record, I put 11 because I actually was more thinking somewhere in the middle, like probably actually more in the 9 to 13 range. 9 is like, in 9 you have Fern Gully, Flash Gordon, the first season of Mega Man, Sonic OVA, Pirates of Dark Water, Tokyo Shirei, Soul Brain, Tron, and East 2. Honestly, I would not. I would say that Sweet Home is a better crafted movie, to especially compared to the kind of the main other horror movie that we've done. I do feel that Sweet Home is a better package. But that being said, Phenomenon definitely is not as we kind of mentioned, it's an enjoyable it's an enjoyable ride if you're into it, and even if you're not super into horror, there's still some fun stuff to get out of it. I would not be against putting this at 9. So I think let's just go with that. So, got that all put in. This is Dario Argento, theatrical horror, 1985. Oddly enough, in episode 85. And it is horror genre and horror tone. Now, content-wise, let me get my list to get all the ones in there. There is, in a very technical sense, there is like one scene in which a girl is getting dressed, but it's like you don't see anything, so that's like not there. Explicit gore. Also, man, I'm just remembering at the very end when that dude's head just pops off like a Pez dispenser. That was a weird one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, just trying to make sure I got excessive profanity. No, it's not really, and there's no real photosensor issues. Graphic depictions of bodily functions, I will definitely say, is in there. Just putting it in for more, anyways, falls within gore, but that the just the maggots and all that I feel is worth noting. So, is there anything we want to call out for charm, cinematography, storytelling, action, and art?
You know, you got to put a thumbs up for music.
Yeah, it's like a thumbs up that's like slightly half cocked because it's like it is good music, but probably not for the reason they intended.
I would argue campy charm.
I would also say can't be charm. Cinematography, like the cinematography isn't bad.
You
Like
put it in the
it's
wrong spot.
oh whoops. Um,
As much
Sure.
of I'm a fan of this, I feel like a lot of scenes felt disjointed. Particularly the overuse of quick cuts to like very specific things that and like it starts with a character experiencing some kind of like almost traumatic event, and then it's quick cuts to a bunch of random shit, and then back to the person having that fit, and then some more quick cuts. Like it's the way it's done. I didn't like the editing. I didn't like the shooting. And I felt like there were a number of issues with it that really held it back.
I mean, once again, every time there was a murder, it was just shots of the stabbing stick.
yeah,
It was a good stick though.
It was
It
a
was a good
good
stick.
stick. Did its job great.
yes. So yeah, the pacing on this is a little weird. It's also I feel a bit too long.
It is.
Um,
There's a lot of sequences that could be taken out that would make the movie better.
I mean, the writing in general is kind of weird.
it's weird, but I don't think that I would say that it was bad for the most part. Like there's some weird like views of like like there's some not great implications about views of the mentally ill in this.
Yeah, it has feelings about mental illness.
Yeah.
Especially they don't really go over like it took me a while to understand what the implication about why the son is the way he is, but it took like reading on Wikipedia the reason why they're kind of implying is like that's not great.
Yeah, it's also a plot point in one of the later Friday. I keep saying Friday 13th. Nightmare on Elm Streets. Uh, the original idea was that Freddy was basically like I think he was a child molester, and that
Yeah.
like parents trapped him in a furnace and murdered him. But in a later film, it's argued that he was born when an asylum basically burst open, and a single nurse was assaulted by 1,000 people over and over, and he was born from that. So like that's kind of it's not a full on trope, but it's been done enough times where it's sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's this isn't like I always hate saying this because I never want to assume this as a saying that this was okay, but very much of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is not a great viewing, but unfortunately time moves on.
I mean, the big problem with the horror genre is that no matter what time age you're in, it still grapples with the same problems. It's an extremely misogynistic and racist genre. It just is. The treatment of women in horror is absolutely obscene, even still now.
This is very sex negative as a whole.
Yeah, very sex negative. The whole trope of don't have sex or you'll die in a horror movie. Black guy dies first being a trope. The racism. So I mean, it's a great genre with a lot of great ideas, but it's a genre that still struggles with growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, I just felt like that was also worth pointing out there. But other than that, like I don't think the story was that bad. Action, I wouldn't really put anything to note there. And the art was fine. Like those bodies looked decayed. So yeah, I think these are a good set of charms for this movie. And yeah, overall, I feel it's a good movie, though I don't think it's going to be I would not use as an example of the horror movie to change like people's view on the thing. If you like horror movies, if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. But if you're not into horror, you might want to stick away from this movie. Yeah, there's Phenomena. It's a movie that it's fun to watch, just also because it's like you could see, like, especially if you played the first Clock Tower or Clock Tower: The First Fear, you can definitely see where the inspiration came from. So, with that, before we close, Axe, is there anything you want to plug?
Autistic Self-Advocacy Network.
All right, Torpo.
Twitch.tv/Tarpatypist and @Tarpatypist on Twitter. And I would like to plug the hole in this fucking gas canister on my goddamn boat.
Yeah, I forgot about that bit.
Stab that fucking gas canister, lit that boat on fire.
Yep. So yeah, that is it for Phenomena. Next time, we are actually, because of the timing of this, we are actually doing the next movie I went ahead and chose because it is the episode that is the closest to my birthday. But it is also in October, so I felt it should still be a horror movie. So I picked a movie that is a horror movie that I feel is probably one of my favorite horror movies. And in fact, it is actually technically one of my favorite movies of all time. Although or one that I like the composure of, or the composition, or whatever you'd call it of. It is just a really damn good movie, and like talking of horror movies that I feel like can like change people's view on horror movie genre. We're taking a look at Ridley Scott's Alien next time, which is it's going to be also a fun time because it's going to spawn one of those conversations that will also come up should we ever do the Terminator. Which one's better?
Yeah.
That lovely wank session of an argument. But yeah, that'll be next time, which will be fun because I really like that movie. Anyway, that'll be next time. So thank you all for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you would like to see the list in which we have ranked every single thing we've done for Media Delta, you can go to r3.ldp.life in your browser. If you would like to watch the sister show that determines what could show up on Media Delta, that's Retro Rank Rhapsody, you can watch it live on Twitch at twitch.tv/LoloToPuzzlo or on YouTube at youtube.ldp.life. If you would like to discuss this episode with others, please join our Discord server by going to discord.ldp.life in your browser, which should give you a link. Thank you again for listening.